current medical emergency. I have some boilerplate that I read every month because it's a virtual meeting. All of you have heard this many times. I apologize. Let me do it as fast as I can. PSTA has developed several methods of ensuring the ability of the public to comment prior to and during the virtual meeting. It's established these options. During the meeting, the public can provide, can someone mute? During the meeting, the public can provide public comments via telephone by calling 415-655-0002 with meeting ID 157-586-4604. It's on your screen. Individuals will be able to speak for 3 minutes during public comment. Again, to make a public comment today during the meeting, you should call 1-415-655-0002 with meeting ID 157-586-4604. The second option allowed for the public to submit written comments prior to the meeting by snail mail. Did we receive any? Do we know? It's pretty rare that after written a week ago. The third option allows the public to submit comments by email. Again, they might have submitted them before the meeting, or you can submit email during the meeting at publiccomments@psta.net. If an emailed public comment received before or during the meeting are 400 words or less, we will read them aloud during the meeting during the appropriate time. Public comments that exceed 400 words will be provided to the board members in writing. Any documents the public submit to the clerk have been provided to the board members prior to the meeting. All comments submitted will be included as part of the public record for the meeting and will be considered by the committee prior to any actions. When addressing the committee, the members of the public must first state his or her name and his or her address. Thank you very much. Then let's get started. What we normally do is have a call to order. If everyone will please unmute so we can do this as quick as possible. Let's check who's here. And we'll start to say that I'm here, Chair Kovar. Roman, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Chelsea.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome. Teresa. I
Here.
saw you. Andrea.
Yes.
Welcome. Jason James, I saw you.
I'm here.
Great. Ed, I heard you.
Yep, I'm here.
Welcome. Gloria, I saw you.
Here.
Mark O'Hara, where are you?
Present.
Great, there you are. Mark Boyce, did I see the other Mark?
Yes, sir.
There you are. Welcome. Sebastian, we spoke.
Yep.
Welcome. Mike Davenport. I did not see Mike. Well, he may show up a little later. And Kim, I saw you.
Here.
There you are. Okay, so we've had attendance and we can all hear each other. If you guys will go ahead and mute, that will help us. Let's get going then. Are there any public comments, either snail mail, email before, or on the phone?
Marissa?
We have not received any written public comments, nor is there anybody on the phone for public comment.
Okay, well, we did our part. We gave them a chance to tell us what they were thinking. Then let's go ahead and move on. First thing we do every month is I give my chair report. It was nice last month. I actually did dial in and talk to the board, giving them a presentation. As you know, I do both halves, that I tell them about what we did, and then I tell you guys about what they did. Their meeting was pretty ordinary. They gave a summary of what the PSTA was doing for Women's History Month. There was a recognition of a driver. The board approved the fiscal year auditors report and funding, so some pretty technical stuff. And a great presentation. I think we've seen it, about the bus on shoulder project. That was the part that interested me most because it was, technical and tactical. So those were pretty much the executive. I don't know if anyone has any questions about the board. Those meetings are on YouTube, and you can always watch them there. Then with that, let me turn it over to Gloria, if you will. What did we do at CAC, at the Forward Pinellas Citizen last month?
Yeah, last month and a month and a couple days ago, right?
Right. Does everybody understand that CAC meets 2 days from now? So when we give you the summary of last month, it was 28 days ago, and then boom, we have our next meeting. So
right. But I did take notes this last month, so that I would have things to mention to you. There were 3 really interesting things that were covered at the Citizens Advisory Committee for Forward Pinellas. And those of you who are from St. Pete, it was a presentation of the 18th Avenue South Complete Streets program and how it meant less to me because I'm not as familiar with the roads, but again, as they're doing these complete streets, they are making sure that transit is part of it, making sure that there's safe access for transit riders. And so I don't know, as that evolves, whether, we want to have a special presentation about that at our meeting. But if you have any questions, that Forward Pinellas can certainly address that for you.
Well,
And-
18th South is the Enoch Davis Center, right? Do I have that correct? And that's the main street. If you have Central Avenue, 18th South is the main east-west corridor through south of Central, east of 275. It's fantastic. And again, slowing down cars, adding transit, pedestrian friendly. I love that line. Who taught it to us? That every person who rides a bus is a pedestrian directly before and directly after riding the bus. All right, back to you, Gloria. Sorry for interrupting.
No. Thank you. You can add to it. And I figured, especially St. Pete, I'm not that familiar, so thank you. Then the second thing that was really interesting is they had a presentation of the Innovation Transit Technology Feasibility Study. And they had funding from the state that allowed them to examine the technical, financial, and regulatory issues with 3 transportation systems, including a Hyperloop, air taxis, and aerial gondolas as part of the whole flow of things where they might be applicable. Nothing is being directly planned, but they had the funding to be able to do some studies on that. And they were just fascinating, again, alternative ways of getting people moved around. That might be for fun, something we would want to see. I think that was presented by T. Barda. So, we might be able to get them to our meeting if anyone's interested. And then the third one that I thought was also very interesting, they talked about COVID impacts on transportation. And they looked at what it did to the roadways when people were all staying home. Of course, there were fewer cars on the roads, and the impacts there, as you would expect, would be some fewer collisions and so forth. However, people were driving faster because there were fewer cars getting in their way. But there were the one thing that really was way kicked up was the Pinellas Trail. So many more people were using the trail during the times when we had to be in lockdown, and a lot of that has continued. And so, you talk about the things that have benefited from the pandemic. The Pinellas Trail has it, and soon we're going to have. I'm looking forward to when we have the loop. That's the Duke Energy Trail. Part of it goes right by where I live, so it'll get us all the way around the county if we want to on bicycles or power wheelchairs, even as we want. So
Rollerblades, yes.
Yeah, so those were just very interesting things. We don't think about the impact of COVID on transportation. We know that there were fewer people riding buses, but there were changes in everything.
At a macro level, those statistics were pretty good, and that information's out on the web if you go to Forward Pinellas. Like you say, less people riding the bus and less people driving cars just meant that people drove more dangerously. I guess that part was a little sad.
So yeah, some did, but there were fewer cars out there, so that helped.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Gloria. Anyone have a question for Gloria? It was a good meeting, and remember, you're all invited to join the citizens, certainly to show up. We had their first meeting in person. We still did social distancing, sitting, and distance apart, but they're starting to show up in person at the CAC.
Well, as we're all getting vaccinated. So.
Right, exactly. 2 and done.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gloria. Then with that, let's move on to our first item of business, which is the Jolly Trolley. I see Mr. Bradford is here, and appreciate the information for us.
Well, thank you, Chair Cover. Hello, everyone. James Bradford, Chief Operating Officer. My pleasure to be here and to see you all again. I don't know the last time that I've got a chance to interact with you all, and hopefully one day in the near future, we'll all be together again under the same roof and be able to see you in person. But we're working there. I heard someone earlier talking about vaccinations, and that's all we can ask. We're all doing the best we can. We're still trying to stay safe while we strategically plan to reopen at least PSDA services, hopefully early this summer. So let's talk Jolly Trolley, okay, for a minute, and we can go ahead to the next slide. By show of virtual hands, how many folks know or have heard of Jolly Trolley? Most part. Everybody, okay. Most folks, I believe, have heard of Jolly Trolley. By show of virtual hands, how many people have been on Jolly Trolley or have used Jolly Trolley services? Okay, I see some thumbs up. I see some other hands waving. Okay, well, good. Well, listen, this is Jolly Trolley is a fabulous service, and you can go ahead and bring it to the next slide. Folks love it. We love it. We've had a partnership between PSDA and Jolly Trolley Incorporated for years, and we want to continue that. And I can tell you, they've operated nearly 40 years out in the beach area up in North Coastal, and we want to see it continue for at least another 10 years. It is an absolute hit. The red and yellow pewter scheme on those hometown trolleys out there. The tourists love them. The local residents love them. I think they're synonymous with that area in Clearwater Beach, traveling up alternate 19 and Route 580 upwards up to Tarpon Spring. Folks know when they see that red and yellow Jolly Trolley, they know where they are. They know what area it's in. And as we try to recover ridership, and we've seen, and we know folks in places are starting to reopen, that our beaches were packed this year. And we could see it, even though we were limiting and restricting the ridership and the passenger numbers on the trolleys, we still saw a huge uptick in ridership on the South Beach route. The North Beach route was doing double what it normally does. The coastal, which sees a lot more tourists, but you also see a lot of residents, a lot of regulars on the coastal traveling between Clearwater, going up through Ozona and Dunedin and Palm Harbor up to Tarpon Springs. Those numbers were through the roof in March. I was tracking them today in April. Those numbers are still going to be in the thousands, tens of thousands of trips that Jolly Trolley this past March and now this April will have delivered. And that's with the restriction of passengers. And that's with not having some of our festivals like the Sugar Sand festivals. Still, they press on. So here's where we are right now. We intend to present to our finance committee tomorrow a long-term 10-year contract extension with the Jolly Trolley. We hope to successfully present that and have that approved and move forward to next week's board meeting, where we also hope that gets approved and look at a long-term partnership. Now, what that means for Jolly Trolley and why we're doing this is Jolly Trolley came to us probably a couple of years ago and talked about the idea of an extension, which will allow them to be able to leverage some more funds, access to more money to be able to do additional things like build a new facility. Long term, what we're looking at is, of course, continuing and strengthening our partnership with Jolly Trolley and PSDA. We're looking at opportunities to save money through a longer term deal with Jolly Trolley, keeping that beautiful service going that everybody loves. And we want to enter this partnership so that Jolly Trolley can build a much needed brand new garage. Part of the discussions will include where else can we save, including fuel savings, which I'll talk to you a little bit more about, and the electrification of trolleys, moving away from diesel trolleys. And if you think Florida, if you think about where Jolly Trolley operates out there in the beaches, you think blue skies, white clouds, clean, beautiful waters, and beautiful beach sands, and we want to think clean air. And as we move towards zero emission electric trolley replacement plan, that is what we'd be looking to do. So if we look at the next slide here, give you a little bit more of the background, you'll see that they currently operate on North Meadow Avenue, and it's just a little strip of land, okay? And you have Clearwater Gas up to the north corner of them that's expanding. You got the Clearwater Health Facility that's a little bit south of them, And the city is going to be expanding that and essentially moving Jolly Trolley off of that parcel of land. Right now, I can tell you it doesn't suit their needs as it is. They need a lot more space. They're unable to park all of their fleet of red and yellow trolleys on there as it is. And then the opportunity to just be able to have better parking, not only for their trolleys, but also for their employees, and a better office set up and maintenance bays all in one place is going to be absolutely amazing. So if we are able to put forward this 10-year agreement, hopefully Jolly Trolley will be able to leverage the funds they need to start construction on a new improved garage. So it means that get them out of there off of North Myrtle Ave, where just kind of the surrounding land is closing in on them. And we'll get them to a new proposed property over in Overbrook Avenue, where the city of Clearwater will allow them to build a new garage on there, state of the art, also being inclusive of things such as we start to replace some of the diesel trolleys with electric trolleys, how do you build an electric depot charger in there? And, figuring that out now at the design stage with the engineers now, so that we can expand and have a facility that can be everything Jolly Trolley needs it to be. So I know they're excited. We're excited for them. All in all, this is just going to mean a much improved operation if we can get this done. If we look at the next slide, one of the things we want to make sure we include in this 10-year agreement, again, I mentioned it before, is a facility that will be able to accommodate electric trolleys. Right now, we don't have any, but what we would look at over the next 10 years is to see that Jolly Trolley in their vehicle replacement plan purchases at least 2 electric trolleys. And then PSDA, as we identify funds and grants, would also be able to purchase electric trolleys and lease them over to the Jolly Trolley so that they can run them out there on their routes as well. And again, it would be at a pace that is either the same or better than how PSDA is replacing its own current fleet of older vehicles. One of the things, and you may have heard in our prior presentations and discussions, is that we are also looking to increase the number of vehicles that we have that are either all electric or at least hybrid electric vehicles as we replace aging vehicles each and every year at PSDA to the tune of 8 to 12 vehicles a year. And if we go to that next slide there, some of the other opportunities that we would look at in this deal is the opportunity to purchase the fuel for Jolly Trolley. And you might say, okay, well, how is that a savings? Bulk purchases allow us to target a better price. And as we try to play the futures and lock in a great dollar amount, we believe and we're confident that we'd be able to lock in fuel prices, maybe even better than Jolly Trolley. This was a model that we did, if you were tuned in to last month, where we finalized a deal in our new paratransit operations, where we're going to purchase the fuel for them as well. So having that big purchasing power hopefully can lower costs, and we can identify some more savings that, quite frankly, we can put back into the operations and make sure we have an optimal expansion of operations in North Beach, in South Beach, in the coastal up to Tarpon, out there as our trolleys run. So to summarize, if we look at the next slide here, the 10-year deal would not take place until October 1st, 2022. The reason we're seeking approval on it so early, again, is if we are able to get approval from our finance committee and our board next week, this will allow Jolly Trolley to be able to go ahead and do what they need to do to access those funds as soon as they can to start construction on a new facility as early as this summer. So our current projections, they run right now at an hourly revenue rate of about $83 and change. At that current marker, increasing a little bit each year over the next 10 years, we're looking at a new contract, 10-year deal with Jolly Trolley and the PSDA, not to exceed, that's what that NTE means, not to exceed about $39 million. And it also allows us to forecast and plan what we need to do in terms of our budgeting over the next 10 years as well. So, of course, We always want to be ahead of things in that regard and look as far out as we can so we can figure out how to appropriate our dollars in the right places. And finally, to wrap up, and I want to open it up to questions, if we go to the next slide here, you'll see that the terms are going to be similar. So how we have our scope of work now, the service that they run, the service hours, starting and ending times, not a whole lot of changes. We're always customer oriented in that regard. But again, just to kind of give you a quick look at what would be different right now, we have the 1 year options, performance bonds. Jolly Trolley is buying all their own trolleys. They buy their fuel. Some of their equipment is purchased by PSTA, but in the 10-year deal, if you look on the right side of that column, again, longer term deal, no performance bond needed. We already have experience with them. We know what they can do, so we're able to waive that. It's some more savings for both Jolly Trolley. The idea to electrify the fleet will be built to the plan. And again, we purchase the fuel. So looking to be greener, looking to be better, stronger than ever before, and just really improve our overall partnership out there to deliver that same great service out in the Clearwater Beach area, which, as I mentioned earlier, is not slowing down. Did not slow down this past spring, and we can only imagine as vaccinations get rolled out and folks get more comfortable and we start to opening things up as we're allowed to do so safely, keeping in mind, listening to the CDC and everything else. This time next year will be full blast. You'll have beautiful events like the Jazz Festival and the Sugar Sand Festival that was coming every year will return, and we'll have a nice, hopefully, deal in place where we're running a strong operation. So the last slide here, you'll see, and my boss, Brad Miller, will go before the Finance Committee and the board next week and recommend the approval of this 10-year deal. So we're really excited about it. Again, I did see some folks on here earlier when I asked the question. If you hadn't been out there, once things start to open up and get safer to do so, and let's let the traffic die down a little bit after April, May here, hopefully maybe you all get a chance to go out there and see some of those trolleys in action and just see what all the fuss is about. But it really is a great service. It's a very popular service. And I tell you what, I've been out there a couple of times to work some events, and it's really popular with a lot of our tourists. They see those red and yellow trolleys coming down, and they just can't help but hop on and take a ride around, which is what we want. With that, I'm going to end it there and just leave a little bit of time to answer any questions you all may have. I know it's a lot to throw at you, but we just wanted to make sure you all knew what was going on and kind of what we have going down the pike. So with that, Chair Cover, I turn it back over to you.
Yeah, boy, Mr. Bradford, that's a great presentation and good information. I have a couple of questions, and if it's all right, at the end of this, although this is not an official meeting because it's in Zoom, I would love for us to take an informal poll to give our support, which cannot be official in the form of a vote. I agree with you completely that those trolleys running up and down the beach are so important. If we could only get more people to take them, because like Europeans don't want to get a rental car and bring their European driver's license, and it would allow us to close more beach parking, let hotels close their large heliport-sized parking lots, so more construction. Some of those condos, maybe instead of having 3 layers of parking, could have only 2 by having folks use those trolleys. And you're right, the red and yellow distinctive trolleys are great. My question for you was that Overbrook location, is that a budding residential? Do I see that? Because I know long-term that may cause trouble. You have lights at night, you have diesel idling. Neighbors tend to complain about it. I know on Myrtle, that's Tan Talk, and isn't it Naughty Nancy's used to be there. It was much more industrial.
I haven't had the opportunity to go down there. It's an undeveloped, big piece of land out there.
Yes, there are not many left, yeah.
And I think it is not that far from residential areas. I'm not sure how close or what the impact would be, but it'd be interesting in the design of this, how you build it out, how you maybe kind of impact it with some sound walls and things, so to kind of lower the impact and the footprint that we'd have in there, having those trolleys come in and out of there each and every day. But that would be
my concern, especially since it's so near the Greenwood neighborhood, and I want to be very sensitive to folks feeling like people are stepping on us. This is our neighborhood. Yeah, and so. I've got several more questions, but let me first open it up to anyone else. Someone else take a shot. Any questions for Gloria.
My one question is, I know there's been talk about doing a test of the automated buses like Ava was in St. Pete. How do you see that overlapping with what Jolly Trolley does? Because to me, I thought when I rode Ava in St. Pete, I thought that would be wonderful for Clearwater Beach as well. But and the Jolly Trolleys are bigger in that space, so.
Yeah, they are. And actually, you know, it's funny you mentioned that because we're actually looking at Ava's huge hit. People love it. Beautiful vehicle. People are so intrigued by the technology. I think, and Cassandra, I'm going to pass over to you, that we might be making our way up to Dunedin, now that you mentioned it, Gloria.
Yes, so that's correct, James. We have executed an interlocal agreement with Dunedin to bring Ava to Dunedin for a short time, maybe 3 months. Hopefully the Blue Jays will stick around in time to be able to have people use it. And then we'll be on to Clearwater Beach. And so we'll be starting to negotiate an interlocal agreement with the city of Clearwater in order to bring the demonstration to Clearwater. And then longer term, we are working with our state advocacy team to look at if there's a possibility of the Florida Department of Transportation starting a new program specifically designed for autonomous vehicles. So we are working on expanding the AVA program. I think for right now, the autonomous vehicle technology space is still in that small, low-speed vehicle opportunity. Longer term, we do think that we'll have more opportunities for larger passenger vehicles. But for right now, the trolleys would continue, the regular 40-foot, 35-foot vehicles that we have would continue, and we would use those smaller circulator services as opportunities to use autonomous technology.
Cassandra, you might take a shot at my next question. I'm not sure who, but I haven't been following the trolley as close as I should be. I know that we're moving the hubs around, the new hub in downtown Clearwater, the hub at the roundabout on Clearwater Beach. And as I recall, the trolleys used to have kind of this goofy hub right in the middle by the aquarium, that if you were going to change trolleys or if you were going to go to North Beach, what has been has that changed since I was last out there? Or
yeah, that's been a few years since they would interline at Island Estates. Since we built the Clearwater Beach Transit Center on the north side of the Causeway Boulevard, and then also a new stop at the Clearwater Marina as the pair to that north side beach transfer center. But we do make sure that from a service perspective, the trolleys pulse at that location so that people can change buses if they needed to go to the North Beach. But for the most part, those are the connection between the South Beach and the Suncoast Beach trolley.
Right, so the North, are they meeting in Clearwater, or are they meeting at the roundabout, or are there 3 trolleys there? If I'm going to go from Tarpon to Don Cesar, where would I jump trolleys, or is there just one trolley?
You would change at the Clearwater Beach Transit Center.
Okay.
Just east of the roundabout. Yes.
Okay.
But to your other question about the Clearwater Multimodal Center, we are looking at a new facility in downtown Clearwater that would replace the Park Street Terminal. And so the vehicles that currently come into Park Street, including the trolleys, would then be transferred over to the new facility that we're looking at.
Right. And that, I didn't make that clear. I was thinking that might be where the trolleys would meet, would be at this new ultra modern Clearwater, the one that's where the Walgreens is out on, is that Myrtle or Missouri?
Yes, it's Court and Myrtle.
Court and Myrtle. So I thought that might end up being the trolley transfer between north and south, but we're saying no. I mean, 60 makes a lot more sense. For
the trolley transfer, that happens out at the Clearwater Beach.
Okay.
Transit Center. Most of our other buses, so if you're transferring to the main system, they would pulse in downtown Clearwater.
Well, and let me throw in my 2 cents. If there was ever a place for an automated vehicle, it would be from the going up North Beach from 60 where the trolley does. I mean, low traffic, Very few pedestrians, not like going down Gulf Boulevard, but enough about me. Anyone else have a question?
Good thought, though. Good thought.
Yeah, I mean, you're always kind of looking for a cul-de-sac, right? So that it's to test the thing out.
Yeah, you do, right. You do tend to look for kind of the perfect environment for it, where there's people, there's pedestrians, it's safe, it's,
Right. And it would save you a trolley. Right now, you have to have a trolley run up there and back for that. And it could certainly be at whatever it is, 5 miles an hour up there. Perfect. Anyway,
So
anyone
for
else
this-
have any questions? Yes.
For this information item, James made it sound really, really easy, but this has been a long haul to get to this point with the Jolly Trolley. This is a major agreement for us. It's one of the longest agreements and one of the the highest value agreements that we will have for PSTA. And so my hat's off to James for all the hard work to get us to this point where we could be approving this agreement.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. Give a shout out. There's always people behind the scenes that you don't see. We give a shout out to Al Burns and our procurement team who, a lot of these things come across his desk, and he works to make sure that, we work out all the behind the scenes and the numbers and the boilerplate language and everything else. All the other considerations that we have to make sure that we're doing things the right way.
Well, 10 years is no longer dating. That's married, right?
It is a PSA Jolly Trolley marriage, absolutely. But, it's been a good partnership, and we're excited to keep the service going.
Yeah, and the things that you're advocating for, which is joining purchasing power for vehicles, for fuel. The only concern that I have is why not just finish the job and bring the thing inside? And I'm not going to start on all that, but often the justification for that is that the salaries for third parties is lower salaries and benefits, which just makes that kind of.
Yeah, there's a lot of considerations, and again, Jolly Trolley, they've had this presence in the community for decades. So there's that, and then there's cost considerations. So certainly, I think when PSTA partners up with other contractors, whether it's paratransit or trolley services, you look at is this a lot more money if we tried to take it in house as compared to does it make sense to kind of have some of these things contracted out?
I'll get on my soapbox for just 10 seconds and say it's the same when the school system has a third party school, when anyone says, well, let's just third party that, a third party jail, a third party, whatever. You're saying, well, we'll have big savings. That's because you cut everybody's salary. That's just what I'm worried about. So the more that PSTA does, the more it looks like PSTA, and you start saying, well, the only savings really is in the employee costs and benefits. So anyway, but I'm off my soapbox now. Let me turn over any other questions from anyone else.
I have a question.
Please, Sebastian.
Okay. I will tell you from experience, the Clearwater Beach Transit Centers work absolutely great compared to what they used to have.
Thank you. We worked hard. There was a partnership between us and the city, and the city really did help us out with making that happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're I gotta say, I went out there, we're so proud of that area, and the partnership with the city, putting in the crosswalks, putting in all the safety features to make sure. I mean, that's so much foot traffic there, and you have folks that either are from there, but a lot of folks not familiar with the area, just bright-eyed at all the sights to see, especially when it's festival time. But being able to have that there as a landing spot for all of just a meeting spot for all of our multiple routes, it's been awesome. And Cassandra led that effort a few years back, and it's still going strong. So again, once we get out of this fully, some of the restrictions by COVID, to see that going back full blown is going to be excellent.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from anybody? Then I would love to send James off with a consensus, an informal consensus, since we can't have a formal vote, since we're not a quorum or an official meeting, that we love it and it's a great idea. I certainly give you mine. Does anybody wish to say that they don't? Does anybody disagree with it? If not, I would be glad to send you off with a unanimous consensus.
I appreciate it, Chair Cover. Thanks so much. Thanks to everyone. Great to see you all. again.
Great presentation, and looking forward to 10 years of a good marriage with the Jolly Trolley people.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to do it.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
and thanks for your time. Then if we move on to the next step, it's about shelters and trash removal. I guess we have a new contract. Where's Henry?
I am here.
There you are. All right, let her rip.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. So for those that are new to the TRAC committee, my name is Henry Lukassick, and I am the Director of Fleet and Facilities. And today, which I do seem to recall that just about once a year, I give a presentation about how we keep our stops and shelters and our terminals clean and neat, or at least do the best job we possibly can doing so. So every year we get a little bit better, and this presentation gets a little bit different. So let's go to the first slide. We'll go through this. All right, so little thing about the facilities division of the maintenance department. It's a relatively small division. Internally here, we only have about 12 people, and that is certainly not enough people to service everything we've got out there in the fixed route system. So the only way that we're able to accomplish that is through the use of contractors and subcontractors. And with all our powers combined, we're able to keep everything out there going and cleaned up and for our passengers. So really, facilities maintenance, along with all our contractors, are pretty much working 7 days a week, 24/7. So let's go to the next slide, please. So as you've probably heard some numbers, we're not going to spend too much time on this slide because I got a better graphic after it. You know, we've got a lot of bus stops out there, relatively close to 4,400. We've got many shelters, benches, and terminals. So let's go to the next slide. I put this graphic together just to show, if you looked way up and mapped out all of our stops in Pinellas County, you would see that we are pretty much everywhere, just about on every what looks like street. We have so many stops that, as you can see, we even are in portions of Pasco where we connect up with PCPT, and Hillsborough County where we connect up with Hart. So we got a lot of ground to cover out there each and every day. So let's go to the next slide. So what exactly goes into all that we do? Well, let's start off with what PSTA puts forth on this. Our annual budget currently, FY21, is about $600,000 that we spend cleaning up trash, keeping our shelters cleaned, benches maintained, and that equates to about a staff of 20 full-time employees. That's what FTE stands for, about 20 full-time employees, and about 73,000 labor hours per year. And as you heard me mention before, we are out there about 24 hours a day. Next slide, please. What goes into those operations? Well, first thing, you've heard me mention 6 times just in this presentation alone, is bus stop cleaning. We've got several crews out there. These are the crews that comprise our contractors. So you've probably heard of them. We have a contract with AJI Services. These are the folks that you see out there. A lot of times you don't see them during the day. You may. For the most part, they're working at night. And they're out there 6 days per week, and 4 to 6 crews. Next slide, please. So I often get asked, and we often get calls about trash. That seems to be a hot topic out there. Trash, full trash cans. So I wanted to just throw some data to the group and really focus on the lower graphic, which talks about pounds of trash removed. So going back to FY16, and you can see it all the way out to FY20, is that the amount of trash that PSTA collects in the county from its bus stops is growing incrementally, some would say exponentially, each and every year. So if you look at FY20 alone, 605,000 pounds of trash that PSTA collected in that fiscal year alone. In tons, 302 tons of trash in that year alone. If you look to the right, you see that this is currently in FY21, which the year we're operating right now, that just from October to March, not even a full year yet, we're up to about 500,000 pounds of trash. So if we were to project out where we would end up at the end of this fiscal year, which would be September 2021, I would be willing to bet that we would exceed FY21's trash collection. Now, as many of you have rode the bus, you ride the buses all the time, you see that each bus has a small trash can in the front, and we do collect quite a bit of trash off the buses. Some of you may want to know, well, Henry, how much trash do you collect off the buses? Well, that is worth another 200,000 pounds of trash just off the buses. So if we combine both what we collect out of the trash cans at the stops and off of our buses, we are just a little bit shy of 1 million pounds of trash a year. And if I quickly add up on my calculator what that is in tons, 500 tons of trash a year that PSTA collects. Now, we have noticed some increase in the sheer volume of trash that we've collected over the last year during the pandemic. Perhaps this might be due to more folks eating out. I'm not exactly sure of that, but we have noticed an increase. And of course, with spring break, we have increased our service out there along the beach runs, the Gulf Boulevard runs, and the tourist areas with additional service and coverage. So keep those shelters neat and clean during the spring break. So really that's something to take away from this, is that we do collect a lot of trash out there. We sometimes refer to ourselves as the second waste management of the entire county. Next slide, please. So in addition to collecting trash, we power wash shelters all the time. We're doing the transfer terminals. These are the major hubs, about 3 times a week. About 45 shelters are cleaned each week, about 2,100 a year. And the 3 main terminals are washed weekly. Now, all of those should have a little asterisk after them, which is if any of those locations require immediate attention for whatever reason, we don't normally wait for the next rotation. We'll send a crew out there immediately once we're notified that it needs some assistance and help out there. As you heard me mention before, a lot of times I get asked, Henry, I don't see anybody out there ever. Okay, well, for the most part, they are working after hours, which is 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And really that is to minimize the impact to folks in the shelter or the terminal, and of course the traffic that they're working along in the streets. Next slide, please. Now we do have a crew, as we call them a daytime floater, that is out there about 8 hours a day. We actually increased this to two crews since I last did this slide. And really that was to help focus on the spring break service and the extra attention that the beach runs needed. And what they do out there is any what we call hotbed issues, right? Shelter has graffiti, needs an emergency trash cleanup. There's an abandoned car in a bus shelter and we need to pick it up and have it towed away. That actually is true. That happened one time. Or the shelter is damaged in an accident for whatever reason. We will send those folks out there immediately to take care of the problem. They also do light maintenance, repairing signs, updating signage. Next slide, please. So with all of these folks out there, and of course, all of the reports that we get and all of the shelters and stops that we have to maintain, there's no way that you're going to be able to do this with pen and paper and a calendar. So of course, as you know, PSTA invests in technology, and the maintenance department is no exception to that. So what we use to take all reports and coordinate the work and make sure that it gets done and it doesn't slip through the cracks is we have a centralized management system that we refer to as Property Track. Now, for those that may live in a community such as an apartment, you know that if you require maintenance, you go to an online dashboard and you fill out a maintenance request, and message comes back and says, thank you, we'll get to it, and you're kept informed. That is basically how Property Track is built off of, that same type of premise. And the facilities team spent a lot of time working with the company Property Track to modify this program so as to fit our needs, right? So when we get a report, it goes in, it's automatically scheduled and issued out, and a work order created. And we can follow that and track that work order to completion. Our contractors that are out there in the field directly interact with our Property Track system. So as we don't have to overlap one system having to send to another system just to send it back to our system. So efficiency of communicating and coordinating is that much better for us. Next slide, please. Now, our contractors in the field, in all of their trucks and their offices, also employ their own use of technology, such things as mapping equipment, telematics for their vehicles, GPS location. They're all computer outfitted so that they can receive work order requests in real time. And for efficiency and planning of routes, they can also take hotbed points along their routes and say, okay, today's here where we need to focus on. Month from now, it may not be as active. So it's always changing, always evolving, and we always try and stay one step ahead of where we need to be next. Next slide, please. So one thing that, the use of technology is when you have 4,000 bus stops, right? You want to be able to optimize your travel pattern. You don't want to go around the block 3 times, right? You want to go around the block once and then go down the next street and not have to double back. So, through the use of technology and GPS mapping tools, you can find geographic patterns that can't be seen just in a database or Excel or just locations on a screen. So all that really helps dial in the efficiency and increases coverage out there. We don't have to be, if we have bus stops that do not receive a lot of activity, then there's no point sending a crew there to empty an empty trash can. We reprioritize those resources to more heavily used routes that need more attention. Next slide, please. So really in conclusion, I wanted to put on this slide that when we think about all of the maintenance that goes into our fixed route system, or what we internally called amenities, that it's not just picking up trash or washing down shelters. I wanted to really put together an itemized list of all of the things that go into the repair and the maintenance of all of our assets out there in the field. And as you can see, we repair electronic stop signs. We do all the schedule changes in the shelters. bus stop removals and adding. I know that several of you have submitted requests to either add a bus stop or remove a bus stop or suggest a better location for a bus stop. And I want to say that none of those ever go not addressed. We do have an internal amenities committee that meets once a month, which is made up of all the internal departments here at PSTA, and we vet these reports or suggestions, and we try and remedy and take all of those under advisement to resolution and conclusion. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions regarding the maintenance of our bus stops.
Mr. Lukassick, what a presentation. That had a lot of neat things I never knew about. The most of which, just the sheer volume, most of that stuff I knew about, there being computer packages for routing people and tracking jobs. But my goodness, the thought of those being spread all over the county. The one lesson I got from it before I let anyone else talk is if I see a dirty bus stop from now or extra graffiti or a spilled trash can or an abandoned car, to call somebody. I take it the phone number is in the stop. I've never noticed. I've always just shrugged my shoulder and said, well, there you go, and gotten on the bus. Is that the best way to get a hold if I'm sitting in a shelter that's in bad shape to get that day crew scrambled?
Yeah, you know, if you go to our website, our CSRs have an online chat function now.
Yeah.
Which should pop up immediately when you access the site.
Okay.
We also have our tried and true phone number.
Right.
And of course, our email address
Sure.
to our customer service department. All of those get forwarded to the maintenance department and get routed for pickup.
Those numbers were astounding. That's amazing. And if I can turn it over, does anyone else have a question for Henry or questions or comment or ideas? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I do want to add one thing because you brought up a point I forgot to mention, which is, you know, we work with all of the cities in Pinellas County. So,
Sure.
you know, a lot of times with communication, it's we get a phone call from someone in the city, Public Works, and we have to pass it along, and it's just gets passed down the line. So one thing we've been working with several cities is that they now have direct access to our property track system. So the county, St. Petersburg, I know Treasure Island was recently added, and I think Largo was put in there. So now if a city, Public Works, or anybody, a city employee traveling, they can enter a work order, and that will get routed to our contractors to be taken care of. So it's just it's taken out the middleman, so to speak, or many of them, so that things get addressed faster.
That's fantastic. That's the kind of stuff Gloria and I see all the time in Forward Pinellas, trying to coordinate between the 37 cities and different county departments. That's fantastic, Henry. I'm glad to hear that. Then if anyone else has a question or a comment, you're muted. Gloria?
I'm unmuted.
Oh, there you are. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, great job, Henry. Whenever I've seen a mess, I've called the customer service number. Things get picked up. One time there was a place where I saw a bunch of people sitting on the grass, and I called. I said, I think this place could use a bench. And I mean, it was days, and there was a bench there. And so everyone has been massively responsive, and so thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I just want to let everyone know that I am the face of the maintenance department that you see, but I am nothing without my great staff. Superintendent of Facilities, Missy Nevitt, does an outstanding job. All of the members of our amenities committee, from planning and scheduling to transportation, safety and security risk. We are really here to make improvements and do the best job that we can for our passengers. So I will thank them all.
Well, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions for Henry? Then if not, I appreciate your time and the presentation. That was great information.
Thank you. My pleasure.
On behalf of the committee, we thank you. Then let's go ahead and move on to Cassandra. You've got information for us about changes coming in June. What is that about?
June service changes.
6 weeks? 6 weeks, 8 weeks?
Yes,
from now?
it's pretty soon, about 6 weeks.
Okay.
So as you know, 3 times a year, we take a look at our routes and make service changes. Sometimes it's just a matter of looking at running times or, you know, a little bit of a long-term detour. But we do change our routes on a regular basis, and we watch what they're doing and how they're performing. Since March of 2020, we've made a lot more changes than just 3 times a year. But we've been very closely following the CDC guidelines. And so our early changes at the beginning of the pandemic included looking at how we would keep our riders and our operators safe. We had some service reductions. We required face coverings. You'll know when you're riding right now, you're going in the rear door. And we also had some maximum passenger loads that we instituted. And we've been looking at national best practices to understand what other agencies are doing and what their numbers look like, and then making decisions accordingly. In our February service change, we had taken some data about that max passenger load issue and some people getting passed by because the buses were at their max capacity, and we added some service to some routes. We're finding that is not necessarily increasing ridership dramatically, but it is decreasing the number of pass-bys, and it is creating a better riding experience for those routes that were able to get that little extra boost of frequency. But now, as we continue to look at our the CDC guidelines and the number of vaccinations in Pinellas County, we think it's time to go back to regular service. So as of June 6th, we will be resuming our normal levels of service, so at pre-COVID levels. We will be lifting the max passenger load capacity. We will have pre-COVID level frequencies on all routes, increase the service span on those routes that were running previously beyond 10 p.m. And we're going to start front door boarding. And so all of that will happen on June 6th. Additionally, we've talked about when we would reinstate fares.
Right.
We are one of the very few agency that is still fare free across the nation. But we think it is time, with the level of vaccinations and the institution of our new contactless fare payment system, Flamingo Fares, that we feel comfortable now going back to fare collection in July. And so a lot of the service changes will happen in June, but we won't start charging fares until July. And we'll have some special promotions that we're working out as people transition from the mag stripe fare payment to Flamingo fare payment. And so next month, we will present to you and to the planning committee an operational and equity analysis and considerations that we'll be taking as we resume fare collection, and what that looks like for Flamingo fares. So this will be in operation June, the service changes, and July reinstating fares. And so we just wanted to let you know, get your comments, questions, and concerns out, and then proceed with the service change. So
Thank you for that information.
Mm-hmm.
If every time someone says Flamingo fares, I always praise it as bulk buying on the back end. In the old days, you'd have to buy your monthly pass on the first, and if grandma got sick and you left town for 2 weeks, you'd essentially have wasted money. But with Flamingo fare, it's smart enough that if you buy a day, first, second, third, fourth, it gives you the month break once you hit whatever day it is. Whereas if you leave town on the middle of the month, it's smart enough to say, well, you didn't buy any on the 16th. You always end up with the cheapest fare. So I call it, month passes on the back end, which is perfect.
It really is.
It's fantastic.
It's really some built-in equity, right? For those people who may not be able to afford a monthly pass at the very beginning of the month.
Right.
You can load funds onto the card as they're available to you. And once you hit that $70 in the calendar month, you ride the rest of the month free. So it'll be a big savings to those that are using daily passes or weekly passes. And we're really excited to introduce that, not only from the cost savings to the rider, but also the contactless options. So we'll have cards available. We'll start distributing those cards probably in June. And so you'll be able to get your cards to start, or we're also looking at how we're launching the mobile app at the same time. So for you as TRAC members, we'll be managing your cards and distributing your cards. And so you'll still be able to ride free as a payment for your service, I suppose.
Yeah, we're paid in cookies at the meeting and bus passes. But,
right. So as members, active members of the TRAC, you do get free bus passes, and so you'll be one of the first to get the passes, and we'll do that in a card form, and then Mary Ann will manage the cards. So as people come on and off TRAC, we'll change those cards to regular cards as we need to.
It was a shame that happened to be, I know things all over the country got pinched in COVID, whether it was basketball season or this or that. But one of the things was that Flamingo Fair was pretty close to being live. It was sort of in the launching pad when COVID hit. And so but it was great, and it's going to be great the way that it's designed exactly right. People put money on your Dunkin' Donuts card and your Starbucks card and things like that. It's going to be the same thing, putting money on your Flamingo card and then using it with the savings on the back end. It's just great. I hate that coming again, before I was on the committee, having to decide on the first of the month, should I buy a weekly card, a monthly card? What should I do? Now it's just like, hey, get on the bus. The month will handle itself.
So we'll talk about that more next month about what you're talking about, which is the fare capping that will now be available through the Flamingo accounts.
You got it.
But we held off on the launch because we weren't charging fares. And we thought that was the right thing to do for everyone's safety. And now we're feeling good about going back to regular service. I think Mark and Jason have both sort of raised hands.
So does anyone else have a comment or a question, please?
My question is about the Flamingo fairs, and it sounds like we're kind of pushing that to next month. Would you rather wait to ask my question at that time?
Then I'll go right ahead.
Okay, so I love all things technology and all things iPhone. In the iPhone, there's an app and there's a part of your wallet that says that you can link one of your cards up with a transit app. And you can also add your pass to your virtual wallet so it shows up on your watch, kind of like your boarding pass at the airport. Do you know if that's something that Flamingo is going to connect with in the future?
Mark, zinger to start, huh? Yeah.
That's a great question, man.
Let me look into that. I don't know that we'll be able to do that on day one, but we did make some investments long term in Flamingo, and so that let me check that out with the implementation team. Yeah,
that's
thanks,
cool.
Mark. Always a way to throw it out there.
I didn't know you could do that at the airport. That's a really cool feature. Excellent.
Yeah.
And who else has a question or a comment for us here?
I always have a question.
Well, Jason, you're muted. Go ahead, Sebastian. Or Jason? Why don't you go first, Jason? You're here.
Okay, so I guess mine is actually similar to Mark's. I know like in New York City, you could tap your phone to pay for your fares. Will that be a similar feature for people here with the Flamingo app or whatever, stuff like that?
So we'll have smart cards that you'll tap the card. So that's a plastic card that you can get. And then we'll also have a mobile app that will be available. I'm going to check with the team to see what kind of options we'll have for TRAC members. We may start with cards and then transition you to a mobile app once we get sort of the back end office all squared away. But we want to make sure that in terms of a committee, that you first and foremost get your free passes. And secondly, that you can use the app.
And Cassandra, I appreciate, we'll do the presentation next month, but when you get there, to save you the question next month, I'm very concerned about people who first show up in town. I travel often and I want to buy one of these passes and they say, oh, well, go downtown and get it. And you say, well, I'm at the airport. I want to buy it right here. Or can I install my phone app when I'm in Tampa for the bus in Denver? So when I land, I can just tap my phone. And so if you will, don't tell us now, but when you're doing the presentation.
But you'll be able to download it from anywhere. So if you're traveling, and we have made it so we have the option. We haven't used it yet, right? But we did ask for the option to be built into the app. So especially people coming from other locations that are coming for conferences where we could do promo codes. Right, so that people can, so that when we go to transit conferences, sometimes we have to go to the hotel, then the transit agency would give us a pass when we checked in.
Right.
The more recent conferences, pre-COVID, they would send us a promo code, download the app, you have the promo code, it's eligible for 3-4 days, whatever the length of the conference is. And so we will have that kind of capability as well. In addition to that, we will have an entire retail network. So, you'll be able to buy a preloaded card at certain retail networks, including, I think it's Amscot, CVS. We have quite a few that, you know how you go to the pharmacy and they have like a whole rack of gift cards, will be on that rack.
Yeah, as long as there's also a kiosk at the airport for that guy landing in town. That's the big secret. And I'm always worried about the guy coming from the UK or coming from Germany. I say this because when I flew to the UK, here you're landing, you're saying, geez, I don't want a car. I want to be able to hop on transit. And so, and there's folks coming here. I would love to make Tampa, St. Pete, so friendly for them that they just go back and tell everybody, oh, you should go there. It's so easy, it's seamless. Let's go. Sebastian, you had a question for us.
I always have a question.
Cassandra, that's good. That's good.
Did you reconnect with CVS about purchasing cards within CVS like we used to? You know, we bought weekly, monthly passes there.
So from what I understand, they will have the ability to sell Flamingo cards just as you have before. And I'll have Mary Ann double check, but we'll have a list of places where you can reload the card as well. For people who are banked, you'll be able to reload the card online. So you won't have to go to CVS. As long as you have a card, you have an account, you'll be able to reload that app through the app or reload the card through an online portal.
Okay, just like Starbucks or,
One more question. What about DART and mobility on demand? When is that going to happen?
Well, it's happening right now. Maybe we should get a presentation from Bonnie and her group on the updated Access PSTA. So we'll be rebranding and changing that. I'm sure you'll get the same great service as you did before, but it will now be called Access PSTA. It'll be mobility on demand as well as what you're used to as regular DART service.
But you do not know when that fair is going to start.
The fair will start at the same time the fairs start on the regular service.
So it'll be July. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that was my question when I asked Brad a month ago, and I sort of cold cocked him about the transition from COVID. His line was, does Chairman Kovar wish me to predict the future? No, I just was curious what the transition was, whatever day it is. It seems the day is now July 1st. How are we going to get from here to there? And we're saying already we're going to start adding all the lines for free to get everybody used to running it. Then we're going to go to fairs. And then we're going to go to Flamingo. That's what I was looking for.
Well, we'll go to Flamingo as we transition to fairs. I mean, this was very important to Brad to make sure that the payment systems are just as safe as everything else. And we think this is the right time for us as a community, but also that Flamingo is ready to launch, and we want to launch those together. So there was always an intention to relaunch fairs and launch Flamingo at the same time.
Right. That's the COVID piece of it. Perfect. Yes. I get it. Thank you. That was my question last month, and I couldn't say it right. Okay, thank you.
Well,
Anybody
we're
else?
sort of at the front end, we're sort of in the front end of decision-making on that. So we just met last week internally and thought July 5th was the right day to start.
That's the date I've been hearing, is the 4th of July as the day. So I'd love for next month if you would give us just a little, how it exactly played out. Thank you so much for that information. Any other questions or comments for Cassandra about the route changes and implementing, going back to fares? Then, if not, this is the time for member comments. And let me first, I've been handed a comment to read, which is, everybody, you've received a survey regarding us returning back to regular meetings from virtual meetings. If you have not responded, please do. If you haven't received that email, Marianne will send you a new one gladly. It's a little, what's it called? Survey Monkey. How do you feel? When can you do it? Et cetera, et cetera. So please respond to that survey so we can get some information. Any other member comments on anything? We're almost ready to wrap up. Then I would like to just tell a quick story. In the last month, I was able to travel to Asheville, North Carolina, and got to ride their buses. And it was amazing. They looked exactly like us. Hybrid vehicles, diesel vehicles. I went down to the hub. It looked exactly like Park Street Hub. The only two things that were different was on their two main rides, what would be our 19 and our 60, they had a third-party bus because they were doing COVID, mask, no fare, back door. I mean, except for the colors, you'd think you're on PSTA. And on those two routes, they just had an extra bus running. I looked at like a U-Haul truck pulling a trailer, and I was looking, most of those buses ran empty. So I thought, that's a pretty big commit. Like, why aren't you waiting just for someone to say I'm full? But they were running literally a bus and a half, one of those little airport shuttles. But the only other thing to say was they dropped me at the airport and nobody said, this is the airport. I'm so proud of our buses making those announcements at each stop. And when they dropped me at the airport, the 200X, the 300X is such a beautiful handoff point to the shuttle. They kind of dropped me in the field, out in left field. And I said to the guy next to me, is this where I get off? Oh, you want a plane? Yeah. And I stopped and I had to ask a guy, where's the terminal? Oh, over there. I had to walk about 3 city blocks. So it looked just like PSTA, but we really do stuff here. And that was the point of this story, Cassandra and Brad, if you were here, is that we really do a good job here and we should be proud of PSTA. I don't mean to be blowing rainbows.
The voice of PSTA, Bob Lasher, announcing that you've arrived at the airport.
All right, you guys. Any other comments or questions? Any other business? I'll say that I've been seeing BRT construction on Central Avenue. And those folks who were complaining about preserve our lane, I don't know what they were talking about. I mean, I was able to get in there and turn left. And anyway, it looks like real good. We're going to have a nice, easy access to the raised bed on Pasadena. Gloria.
Oh, no. I just wanted to say one thing too. I'm back to riding the bus again now, now that I'm vaccinated and everything. And I was telling my husband, it feels so wonderful to be back on the bus again. And it's like, people think you're kind of nuts, but when you become a transit geek, like a lot of us are, I was just thrilled to be back riding the bus. So.
Well, that's the same in Asheville. Someone said, well, are you going to need to rent a car? I said, you crazy? There's a bus that runs to the airport. And everyone looked at me like I was from Mars. It's like, come on, the free fare, there's a layover downtown and I'll take the bus. And they're just, nobody gets it. Nobody gets it. Yeah. All right. Well, that was a great meeting. A lot of information. Glad we could help you guys.
Thank you.
And thanks for the opportunity, everyone. Our next meeting is in May 18th. We will see you all then. And if not, meeting adjourned. Thanks, guys.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. Fill out that